I'm the new designated federal officer for the Nancy. Thank you all for joining us today. I'd like to thank everyone involved with today's Nancy meeting, particularly the CMR staff, who make it possible to continue with these meetings in this all virtual environment. With that, I'll turn the meeting over to the Nancy Chair, Jennifer McKee.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our third meeting of 2021. We welcome members of the public who are watching via live stream and encourage you to submit any questions to livequestions@fcc.gov. Your questions will be read during the public participation portion of the meeting. Before we begin, I just want to review for council members some ground rules and best practices to ensure we have a smooth and successful meeting. Please keep your microphone muted unless you're speaking. You may use the video function, but it is not required. If you have a question or would like to make a comment during designated discussion times, please use the raise hand feature. Christy will be able to monitor this, and everyone manages their own raise hand feature, so please, once you have been called upon, please remember to unclick it. When you are speaking, please identify yourself as we may not recognize your voice, and please remember to use mute when you are finished speaking. And now, after that overview, does anyone have any questions before we go forward with the meeting? Okay, if not, then I will ask before we begin, do any of the members have any disclosures that they need to make at this time? Okay, not hearing any. So then I'm pleased to welcome Dan Kahn, who is the Associate Chief for the Wireline Competition Bureau, and he is going to make some opening remarks. Dan, the call is yours.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. This is the first council meeting with our newly appointed designated federal officer, Christy Schumann. I wanted to just take the moment to welcome her aboard. Many of you already know Christy, and so we're very happy to have her back with us at the commission. She's a great asset to the Nancy team. It's been great working with her already. And I know you'll all find her expertise and leadership as impressive as we do. I also want to offer extremely strong thanks to Jordan Reth for her outstanding service as acting DFO since the beginning, and for her continued work as a deputy DFO. Thank you, Jordan. We're so pleased to have you continuing to work with us here at the Nancy. I also want to mention recently we issued in the Wireline Bureau directives relating to call authentication, calling for several topics to be discussed that I had discussed previously at the April Nancy meeting. A copy of the letter detailing what we're asking for is available on the commission website. And thank you so much in advance for all of your work on this important issue. As you all know, addressing robocalls is one of the commission's top priorities, and we'll look forward to seeing your reports, and I'm confident we'll find them very helpful. I also want to note that this will likely be the last Nancy meeting before the Nancy recharters in September. I want to take this opportunity to thank you all for your service and the hard work over the past 2 years. You've engaged in incredibly complex issues, provided thoughtful and professional recommendations, and probably most notably of all, done so in the last year or so under the extraordinary circumstances created by the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you all so much. Perhaps most impressive of all, even beyond all that, is many of you have signed up to do it all over again in our new charter. We realize that you all have full-time jobs and lives and many requests for your precious time. And so the fact that you all continue to give so much here to the public is not lost on us. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Just looking at today's agenda, today you will hear recommendations from the Numbering Administration Oversight Working Group on the annual North American Numbering Plan fund size projections and contribution factor. The NANP is truly the foundation of the country's numbering infrastructure. Even as new technologies emerge, we see the continued and evolving importance numbering resources play in telecommunications. So thank you for your focus on this issue. The working group will also present its annual evaluation of the billing and collection agent, Welch LLC. Welch too will provide its annual report to the council. We look forward to hearing both from the working group and Welch, and we appreciate all your hard work. We will also be joined by a colleague in the Consumer and Government Affairs Bureau who will provide an update to the Council on the newly established reassigned numbers database. As you all know, this is an important resource for the protection of American consumers and our numbering resources. We're eager to hear about the database's progress, and we want to thank our colleagues for their leadership and hard work on this project. I also want to acknowledge the Council's and the working group's invaluable role in the development of the database, as well as the critical support of industry, which remains ongoing. Thank you. In conclusion, I'll reiterate that we in the Wireline Bureau are here to support you. If there's anything we can do to help, please don't hesitate to ask. I hope you all have a wonderful summer, that you continue to be healthy and safe, and I'll look forward to actually seeing you in person in the near future. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Dan. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today. So now I will turn the meeting back over to our designated federal officer, Christy Schumann, who will conduct the roll call. Christy?
800 Response Information Services.
Good afternoon. This is Heather with 800 Response.
ACA Connects.
Hello, Mike Jacobs here from ACA Connects. Hi, Christy.
Hi. Ad Hoc Telecommunications Users Committee. Susan?
Gately here for Ed.
Alliance for Telecommunications Industry Solutions. Who's that?
That was just Susan. I had been muted and I was trying to unmute myself. Sorry. Susan Gately for Ad Hoc.
Okay.
And hello, this is Jackie Waldgemuth with Addis.
Okay, great. AT&T. Ola or George?
Garrett for AT&T.
Who was that?
George Garrett for AT&T.
Okay. Bandwidth.
Hi, Greg Rogers is on for panel.
Okay. Charter.
Betty Sanders from Charter.
Comcast.
Tim Cagle, present for Comcast. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Competitive Carriers Association.
Hi, it's Alexi Maltis for CCA.
CTIA.
Hi, it's Matt Gerst with CTIA.
Google. Is Craig on for Google? Encompass.
Yes, good afternoon. It's Chris Shipley for Encompass.
Intrado.
Hi, Christy. Bob McCausland for Intrado Communications.
National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners.
Karen Charles Peterson's here for NARIC.
National Association of State Utility Consumer Advocates. Nevada Public Utilities Commission.
Jill Davis for Nevada Public Utilities Commission.
NTCA, the Rural Broadband Association.
And this is Tamara Ray filling in for Brian Ford.
Peerless. SIP Forum.
Rich Shockey, I'm here.
T-Mobile.
Hi, this is Rosemary Lice with T-Mobile, and Scott Fryermuth is on the FCC Live website.
Great. TDS Telecommunications.
Good afternoon. Paul Najedlo for TDS is here.
Telnix.
David Kasem here. Good afternoon.
Twilio.
Good afternoon. Rebecca Thompson for Twilio.
US Connect.
Good afternoon. This is Bridget Alexander White.
US Telecom.
Hi, this is Christine Halfman for US Telecom.
Verizon.
Hi, it's Dana Crandall, Verizon.
Vonage.
Good day, everyone. This is Colin Brown from Vonage.
iConnective,
Hello, it's Chris Drake for iConnective.
Somos,
Joel Bernstein, and I believe Ann's also on in Berkowitz for Zomos.
okay. Did I miss anyone or did anyone join late?
Hey, Christy, this is George Guerra from AT&T. I'm not sure if you captured me or not.
Yeah, we did get you, George. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
That concludes the roll call. I'll turn the meeting back to our chair.
Great, thank you, Christy. And before we get started with the rest of our agenda, I just want to take a minute to welcome you. Christy is our new designated federal official, as Dan mentioned just a minute ago. Christy returned to the commission in January 2021 after 9 years working in the telecommunications industry on a number of complex regulatory issues. And prior to that, she was at the FCC for 8 years, where she held a number of positions, including Associate Chief in the Wireline Competition Bureau and Legal Advisor to Commissioner Meredith Baker. We look forward to working with you, Christy. And I would also like to welcome a new council member. Kathy Mann will be serving as an alternate representative for iConnective. Welcome, Kathy. It's great to have you aboard. And then finally, one last announcement. In order to foster increased participation, our Nancy meetings will now begin, as this one is doing, at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Hopefully this change will make meeting attendance a little bit easier for our colleagues in Western time zones. Now, on the agenda, the next thing we will hear an update from Brent Struthers, who is the director of the STIGA. Brent, the call is yours.
Thank you, Chair McKee. Can everyone hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great. Thank you again for the opportunity to address the Nancy today. And before I start, I really want to recognize the extraordinary level of commitment shown today by the folks in attendance who live and work in and around the DC area, because by all rights, with as gorgeous as the weather is today, we should all be playing hooky. So that said, I have another item to celebrate, and that is the growing list of authorized service providers. So if you could go to the next slide. I will tell you, while the numbers on the screen were accurate when I sent the slides in a week ago, I thought I could provide some updated numbers, at least verbally. So the numbers I give you verbally will be different than what you see on the screen. Understand what I'm giving you now are updated numbers from what you see on the screen. So the list of authorized service providers now stands at 288, getting close to 300. There's another 25 or so that are approved and through the staging process, the testing process. So all they've got to do is sign their paperwork. And there's another 115 or so pending. I say or so because it changes daily. So it's a lot of service providers in the process or getting through the process. And some of that may have to do with the FCC mandate coming up. But with the increase in the number of registrations, the STIGA has not received any reports of STIPA systems issues. So it's good to see that the volumes don't seem to be causing issues there. All right, if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. On policy, as you know, the board announced, the STIGA board announced a change in the effective date of the revised SBC token access policy in May. The STIPA is now using the public FCC robocall mitigation database to determine if providers that are coming to register actually meet the third prong of the STIGA SBC token access policy. And that third prong is, it says specifically that the service provider has certified with the FCC that they have implemented STIR/SHAKEN or comply with the robocall mitigation program requirements and are listed in the FCC database. So that's what the STIPA is looking for in that public database when a provider comes to register. As a reminder, both SBC token access policies are now in effect, so providers can still use to register their direct access to telephone numbers or that FCC robocall mitigation certification to meet the third prong of the token access policy. But after June 30th, the policy with regard to direct access to phone numbers will no longer be in effect. So all the service providers must have their FCC robocall mitigation database certification. By July 30th, any providers that were authorized under the initial policy, which is the direct access to telephone numbers policy, must ensure that they also have filed their FCC robocall mitigation database certification, or they're going to risk having their SBC token revoked. The board has also, in terms of some other policy changes, I'm going to skip over the policy change requests. The board has taken a look at the support for the use of delegate certificates in the Shaken framework and for toll-free authentication, meaning REST-fork access to SBC tokens. They've taken a look at the changes. They've determined what changes would be necessary to allow both of those things to happen. They're now reviewing the cost to the industry of the systems changes resulting from the policy changes. So they haven't made the policy changes yet. They're reviewing the cost to determine whether or not they want to enact those policy changes. So they plan to finish the review of the cost before they announce policy changes if they're going to happen. So they haven't made an announcement on any of that yet. We've also received another policy change request that is really most applicable to the certification authorities, the ones that assign the STI certificates to the service providers. But the changes that the policy change request proposes would make life a little bit easier for service providers in that it would specify that those certificates that the service providers get from the STICAs that they use to sign calls, if they were assigned under a previous version of the certificate policy, they would not need to be reissued just because there's a new version of the certificate policy, meaning they'd be grandfathered. So it makes life a little easier for service providers. It just specifies that. In terms of some of the technical committee is looking at a new certificate policy. I'm sorry, let me back up. We have another policy change request that's been proposed, and that has, you know what, I already talked about that. So sorry about that. I'm getting lost in my own words here. In terms of outreach, we got a couple of different outreach events coming up. We've got the SIP Forum, Stir Shaken Virtual Summit, where Linda Vanderloop, the STIGA chair, and I will be speaking on, I think it's Friday the 23rd at about 2 p.m. So mark your calendars. We'll be talking about the progress. I think in providing an update on how many providers and what the board is doing on policy, et cetera. The board also plans to release a 2021 mid-year progress report around the same time. So sometime mid to late July, we'll have a mid-year progress report that probably shorter, but a little bit similar to the end-of-year report we released in February. And that's it. If you want to go to the last slide, I'll take any questions that people have. Sounds like a deafening roar, Chair McKee, so I will hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Brent. Okay, next up, we will hear from Tim Cagle, co-chair of the North American Portability Management LLC. Tim, I'll turn the call over to you.
Thank you, Chair McKee. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tim Cagle. I work for Comcast. I'm one of the co-chairs for the North American Portability Management LLC, and I share that privilege with my colleague from AT&T, Teresa Patton. If you'll go to the next slide, please. So for this past reporting period under statements of work and contract amendments, no new statements of work have been received for this period. In terms of NPAC release updates, release 5.02 was completed on April 25th, 2021 and deployed in all regions during a single maintenance window. The software update contained operational improvements and usability enhancements. And since this report was published, we are also now looking at release 5.1, which we will report on schedule-wise at the next NANCI meeting. With respect to Contract Implementation Committee work, or the KIC, 2 new findings reports for providers of telecommunications related services to validate the need for NPAC data access were received and approved from the prior NANCI meeting. And just as a reminder to folks, PTRS users are not service providers, but they do require certain data access for certain data elements of the NPAC to do their work around rating, routing, and billing and or network management. The annual certification qualification or ACQ process for PTRS users for 2021 is in progress, and completion of that is expected in Q3. The 2021 ACQ reapplications were due no later than March 26th, 2021, but the deadline was extended to June 25th. Non-compliant PTRS users risk having their NPAC data access turned off after June 25th. There has been copious communications to the impacted parties, so there should be no surprises with that. As of May 31st, 64% of all PTRS users have completed their 2021 ACQ reapplication process, including those PTRS users that have opted out from further NPAC data access and status has been shared with the FCC. So I'll just add that the balance of the 36 PTRS users, 36% of the PTRS user total are in the process of review and are anticipated to complete that by or before June 25th. So that concludes my report on behalf of the NAPM LLC, and I'll pause to see if there are any questions. If not, on the next slide really is sort of the overarching role of the NAPM LLC, contact information for Teresa and I. And just as a reminder, the NAPM LLC does meet monthly, and a portion of those meetings are open to the public, and we invite and encourage folks to join, and that information is published on the NAPM LLC's website. With that, I will hand it back to you, Chair McKee.
Thank you very much, Tim. Appreciate that presentation. Next, we are going to hear from Karen Schroeder, who is the Associate Division Chief in the Consumer Policy Division of the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau at the FCC. Karen will provide an update on the Reassigned Numbers database. As you know, the Reassigned Numbers database is an important consumer protection resource to help people from receiving unwanted calls intended for former holders of a telephone number that has been subsequently reassigned. We look forward to hearing about the status and important updates. Karen, the call is yours.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Hi, my name's Karen Schroeder. I'm the Associate Division Chief in the Consumer Policy Division of the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, and I'm also the FCC's Program Manager for the Reassigned Numbers Database, also called the RND, and not to be confused with the database that Brent was just telling us about. I'm here today to go over answer some basic questions about the RND, including what it is, what service providers need to do, who will use it, what is the date of consent, how does the database work, how do you access the database, when will it be available, and where can you find more information. So let's start with what it is. In December of 2018, the Commission released a report and order authorizing the creation of the database. It addresses the problem of unwanted calls to consumers with numbers reassigned from a previous consumer by establishing a single comprehensive database. The database securely houses permanently disconnected U.S. geographic and toll-free numbers and the date of the most recent permanent disconnection of each of those numbers. Permanent disconnection happens before reassignment, so the date of permanent disconnection is a good proxy for whether or not the number has been reassigned. The Commission awarded a contract to develop and administer the database to SomosGov, and work began in December of 2020. And we appreciate the Nancy's involvement in developing the technical requirements for the database and some other analysis that were very, very helpful in creating this contract. So what do service providers need to do? Well, three main things: maintain records. Service providers are required to maintain records of the most recent date that each phone number allocated or ported to the provider was permanently disconnected. That went into effect July 27th of 2020. For small business service providers, those with 100,000 or fewer domestic retail subscribers, they got an additional 6 months. So they started maintaining records as of January 27th of this year. The second task is to report monthly. Service providers must report permanent disconnections to the database by the 15th of each month. That just started this past April, a few months ago. Again, small businesses had an additional 6 months until October 15th, this coming October, to comply. And then the third thing is aging numbers. As of July 27th of 2020, all service providers are required to age telephone numbers for at least 45 days after permanent disconnection prior to reassignment. This is really important. It's because of the monthly reporting to the database that this needs to be in place. The 45-day minimum aging period gives time so that after you've permanently disconnected the number, it has time to get into the database before it can be reassigned. So who will use the RND? Well, anyone making phone calls, really. Callers and their agents can check the database to determine whether a telephone number has been permanently disconnected from the consumer they intend to reach, allowing them to avoid calling the wrong person, a consumer with a potentially reassigned number who may not want to receive the call. It allows them to comply with the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. An advantage to using the database is a safe harbor. The Commission defined a safe harbor from the TCPA for a caller that can prove that it, 1, obtained consent from the intended call recipient, 2, checked the database before calling the number to verify that the number had not been permanently disconnected and thus possibly reassigned after that date of consent, 3, received from the database a query response of no, which I'll explain in a minute, but basically it means that the number has not been permanently disconnected, so it couldn't have been reassigned. That was incorrect. So let me get into a little more about what that no response means. How does the R&D work? Any query to the database has to consist of 2 things, the telephone number and a date of consent. And the database will respond with yes, no, or no data to answer the question, has this telephone number been permanently disconnected after this date of consent? So yes means, yes, it has been disconnected and therefore possibly reassigned. Either way, you won't reach the person you wanted to reach after the date provided, and the caller shouldn't call that number unless they have separate consent from the current holder of the number. A no means the number has not been disconnected or reassigned, and the caller can place the call provided they have the consent that they need if consent is required under the TCPA. Excuse me, my landline is ringing, and I would bet it's a robocall. And no data means that the queried number is not contained in the database, and the date provided in the query is before the date when all providers are required to report disconnected numbers. That one's a little confusing, but basically what it means is if the number's not in the database, that means it hasn't been reported as disconnected for as long as the database has been around. If the number's not in the database and the date of consent is before the database started tracking anything, there's no way the database can know if that number's been disconnected or not. So that's the no data response. But note that if you have a date of consent that is on or after October 15th, 2021, then you would not get that no data response. You would get the more actionable yes or no response. Let me go into what that date of consent actually is. It could be the very obvious. The date of consent is the date that you got consent to call the number. But it could also be a date when the caller is reasonably certain that the consumer could still be reached at that number. So a caller could select the date when it last spoke to the consumer at that number, or maybe the date when the consumer last updated their contact information to include that number, or the obvious, the date when the caller obtained consent from the consumer to call the number. So how do you access the RND? Well, it's a web-based platform at www.reassigned.us. Service providers are required to register and submit monthly data there. And callers and their agent may register and query the database there. If you're going to be doing queries, you can do that one number at a time, or you can query larger groups of numbers through a batch process using SFTP or API. We have a screenshot of the database here. When will the database be available? The answer is very, very soon, next week, in fact. The administrator is opening the database for free beta access. That begins July 1st and runs through September 30th. You can explore the benefits of the system. It will give you an opportunity to provide feedback, and those who register for the beta test can take advantage of that safe harbor for no responses that meet the criteria that I explained before. If you are interested, you can email support@reassigned.us for more details on how to sign up. And the website also has more information about how to register for the beta test. Registration for actual paid use of the system is expected to begin in October. That's when subscription pricing will be made available. The administrator and the FCC are going to use the data we collect from the beta test participants to set that subscription pricing. And then general availability is expected November 1st, and that will be after that October 15th date when all providers will be reporting their information to the database. So we'll have a complete database at that point. Because the beta test takes place before October 15th, those who participate in the database will get a higher percentage of no data responses than you'll get for the real system once it goes live in November with all of the providers reporting. But it's still, I believe, worth your while to sign up for the beta test, and we highly encourage you to do so. This last slide gives you all of the ways to contact folks. You've got the website, an email for the administrator's phone number, the FCC's R&D website, and the administrator's Twitter handle. So pick your method and feel free to reach out. And at this point, I'd be happy to take any questions. All right, hearing none, I'll turn it back over.
Great, thank you so much for that presentation, Karen. Sorry, did I hear someone with a question? Nope, I guess not. Thank you, Karen. We really appreciate it. And that was very informative. Okay, next up, we will hear an evaluation of the performance of the billing and collection agent, Welch LLC, for 2020. Presenting on behalf of the NAOWG will be co-chair Phil Lindsay, and we will also hear from the billing and collection agent, Heather Bambrow, will present on behalf of Welch. But we'll start with Phil. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair McKee. Again, my name is Philip Lindsay. I am with Lumen Technologies. I share the co-chair role of the North American Numbering Council's Number Administration Oversight Working Group with Robert McCausland, or Bob McCausland of Intrado Communications, as well as Betty Sanders of Charter. We have several FCC liaisons, Bill Anderle, Merva Charles, and Karen Schroeder. And I also wanted to point out that I believe Bill Anderle is on temporary reassignment, and in the interim, Jonathan Letcher of the Competition Policy Division of the Wireline Competition Bureau is standing in, and we appreciate his efforts and leadership in that respect as well. So thank you very much, Jonathan, for stepping into that responsibility. And we can move into the next slide, I think. So we have the contract oversight activities. Since our last meeting, we do our monthly review of deliverables for the BNC agent, monthly deliverables for the NAMPA, the monthly review of deliverables for the RND, our oversight of the number portability industry forum, and in this, since the last meeting, the development of the budget and contribution factor, and the performance evaluation of the BNC agent. Next slide. So our area of responsibility for the Number Administration Oversight Working Group, it oversees the activities and reviews performance of the North American Numbering Plan Administrator, or the NAMPA, and the Billing and Collections Agent. It also provides oversight of the Number Portability Administration and the newly developed Reassigned Numbers Database Administrator. The FCC contract oversight of the following vendors. So we have the North American Numbering Plan Administrator, the Reassigned Numbers Database Administrator provided by Somos, the Billing and Collection Agent provided by Welch LLP, and then the oversight of Number Portability Industry Forum, which is an open forum for number portability issues that is open to the entire industry. So we can move into the next slide. So the contract status, so we have two contracts. The first contract is for the NAMPA and the RNDA. This contract is combined for both those functions and is effective as of December 1st and expires November 30, 2025, with potentially up to 3 one-year extensions. The BNC agent, that contract obviously was pre-existing to the NAMPA contract and was effective on May 1st of 2018 and is a 5-year duration with expiration in April of 2023. The next slide, please. So our activities involve the monthly review of deliverables of the NAMPA, including the monthly report, the evaluation matrix, the NAMPA system development status, 988 implementation status, and that's specific to the 10-digit transition that would be required there. And I'll go through these in more detail on subsequent slides here. Then we have the monthly review of the RNDA, and similarly a monthly report, evaluation matrix, and then the reporting service provider and TFNA data into the RND. The monthly review of deliverables for the BNC agent, which includes an AMPA financials monthly reports and the R&D financial monthly report. And then finally, the LNP oversight, which is the Number Portability Industry Forum. We move into the details of those activities. The first being the NAMPA. We review monthly reports of the NAMPA reports that include the NAMP, the North American Numbering Plan, and the assignment of those codes, the pooling administration, and the details around the pooled blocks that are being administered in the RNA regarding the PANI type assignments. We go through the evaluation matrix to acknowledge all of the deliverables that are touched on in the monthly reports. And the NAMPA contract includes combining the number administration system, pooling administration, and the routing number administration into a single database. And that is anticipated to complete in the latter part of second quarter of 2022. We can move into the next slide. The NAMPA's 988 implementation planning. This is associated with the National Suicide Hotline and the need to transition to 10-digit dialing in those areas where 988 is an NXX and conflicts with the potential dialing of the 3-digit code of 988. The planning meetings have been held on April 8th, May 6th, and June 10th, and are forecasted to be meet monthly for the status of deliverables for the transition of the 10-digit dialing. Just as points of note is the permissive dialing went in place on April 24th. That has been completed. So those areas where 988 is a conflict, as well as those areas that are transitioning from 7 to 10 digit, are now permissive. In other words, that subscribers can dial either 7 digits or 10 digits in order to complete those calls, those local calls. Second customer notice will be going out on June 26th and then September 24th, which will be the mandatory dialing of, oh, I'm sorry, that's not mandatory, or the notice of mandatory dialing. So additional information can be found at this link here. I think you can also find it at the NAMPA website. The status reporting will conclude upon the nationwide implementation, which has the deadline of July 16th, 2022. So with that, we can move into the next slide. So the RNDA reassigned numbers database administrator, we've picked up this new oversight since the contract renewal. We review the RNDA monthly report, complete the evaluation matrix based on those monthly report deliverables. As a piece of information to give people an idea how things have been proceeding, large service providers were required to upload the initial data that was since July 27th of 2020, and between July 27th, 2020 and April 15th of 2021, 89,637,322 total numbers were uploaded into that database on the 15th or thereabouts, the 15th or just before the 15th of April of 2021. And this includes, of course, toll-free numbers. And to put that into perspective as well, when we moved into the next month, which is the first monthly reporting period since the initial upload of telephone numbers, we have a total of 102,551,177 NAMP numbers. I don't have an update for June, but that's kind of where we were at the time that this presentation was put together. So so this just gives you kind of an idea of kind of what we're looking at least initially, is what we saw as far as numbers uploaded into the database. I provided some R&D websites. This is obviously isn't a complete list of contact information. I'd refer back to Karen Schroeder's presentation that has a little more complete list of contact information for folks that need to get in contact with the R&D on this. So if you would like to move to the next slide. Number Portability Industry Forum. The MPIF continues to meet on a monthly basis with focus on XML interface improvements, LSMS, capacity planning, and best practice review and updates. This is, again, is an open forum to the industry. The regularly scheduled meetings for 2021 that have been identified to this point are June 8th, July 6th, and August 9th. The chairs for the MPIF are Deb Tucker of Verizon, Teresa Patton of AT&T, and Randy Ryan of Comcast. And I've got their contact information there if there are folks interested. So I think on the next slide, we move into the contribution factor. And I would like to turn this over to Heather Bombrow of Welch LLC, or LLP, I should say, I apologize. I will get it right one of these days, Heather. Anyway, so I'll turn it over to you and you can go through. She has the detail that she's going to go through, and then I've got just a brief summary after that, and then we'll move into the vote. I'll turn it back over to the chair for the vote on this. So go ahead, Heather, you can take it from here if you'd like.
Sure. Thank you, Phil. This is Heather Bamber from Welch. We're the billing and collection agent for the North American Numbering Plan. I'm going to ask if we can go to the slide that has the actual budget. I think it's two documents down. One more there. The other pages describe in detail each of the budget line item numbers, but it's probably easier to see if you actually have the numbers in front of you. So the beginning, we've prepared this budget. You'll have the comparative with last year, so you can see this year's budget compared to the one that was approved last year for 2020-21. We are looking at the budget for 21-22. So the first line item is with regards to the North American number, or the NAP administration and the pooling administration costs. All these costs are now as per contract because Somos is now the contractor for these activities. One of the changes we had to deal with this year with regards to this number is because the two contracts have been combined, we've had to ask Somos to help us with determining a split in the numbers between numbering administration and pooling administration. The reason for this being is that the international participants only participate in number administration only. They do not participate in the pooling administration. Somos indicated to us that 43% of the total cost of the contract is towards numbering administration. So towards those particular costs, the international participants, being Canada and the various Caribbean countries, they will be contributing $179,200 towards the total contract cost of $6,980,336. So that leaves us with a net balance to be covered by U.S. carriers of $6,801,136. The carrier audits, which we are required to provide funding for under the Code of Federal Regulations 52.15K, we are providing for $200,000 for carrier audits should they be performed during the year. The billing collection agent cost, which is ourselves, is as per contract at $340,800. The data collection agent, which is USAC, this is the North American or NEMP's share of the cost to administer the Form 499A, from which we derive the information that helps us with our billing process. The annual operations audit is the independent audit performed by Ernst & Young on the fund each year. Its cost is at $51,000. Bank charges we've allowed for $40,000. This includes bank charges both for the bank and for credit card charges, as we have instituted the ability to pay the NEMP fees by credit card. Those costs are estimated at $40,000, again, based on history. Bad debts, we've allowed $40,000. This is for NEMP billings to the carriers who do not pay and are uncollectible. We have reduced all the costs by anticipated interest income. We have decreased it because interest rates have decreased over the past year, as well as the amount of money funds that we are holding in the account has decreased as well. We also decreased this by the by $80,000 for the late fees that are charged to the carriers who don't file their Form 499As on time. Again, it's estimated $80,000, and this number is again based on historical information. So overall, the total disbursements that we need to cover in the fund for the cost for running the North American numbering plan is $7,455,936. We've allowed a contingency allowance of $1 million, which Phil will speak to, and that leaves total costs of $8,455,936. We did have anticipate a surplus. We anticipate it to be roughly about $3,492,000 by the time we come to September 30th, 2021. This number is based on the fact that we did not expend the $2 million contingency allowance that we had allowed last year, nor were the transition costs incurred once the contract was awarded to Somos, given that they continued on as the contractor for that contract, and no additional transition costs would need to be incurred. So that surplus will be applied against the total costs that need to be collected from the carriers. So that leaves a balance of $4,963,718 to be collected from the carriers. The contribution factor is a calculation based on both the budget number that's of funds that we need to have in order to operate and the projected revenue base. So once again, we've provided you with the estimated projected revenue base based on the Form 499s filed to date as of the end of May of this year. Again, the revenue base has gone down. It's decreased by 12%. So it is roughly at $92,699,000. Using these two numbers, we do get a contribution factor of 0.0000535 for this year. Once again, Phil will talk to that number. I have provided the makeup of the contribution factor as in comparison to last year. Again, you recognize last year we did have the separate contribution factor for the creation costs of the reassigned number database. We do not have this year. So just looking at just strictly the NAMP administration contribution factor, again, this year to last year, so this year 0.000535 versus 0.000699. So the contribution factor has indeed dropped for NAMP activities. Most of that due to the fact of the large surplus that we were carrying forward. That basically covers what's in the budget, what the contribution factor is for this year based on the revenue base that we have going forward. Does anybody have any questions? If not, I'll turn it back over to Phil.
Thank you, Heather. I appreciate you going through that. If we move to the next slide. So as Heather referred to this, this is kind of a summary of the contribution factor. It's determined, the contingency piece of this is kind of the big variable. We typically look at three options. This round of contribution factor, we recommended a $1 million contingency fund due to the potential, because the system, the NAS, PAS, and RNAS has not been combined yet. It leaves enough room in there for any potential unexpected change orders, those types of things. So we thought that that $1 million cushion would be sufficient. We didn't think we needed to go to anything above that as we did in the last contribution factor, because there were just so many more variables that we were uncertain about in the last contribution factor period versus this one. So again, this is kind of the summary that Heather just kind of gone over these same numbers. The revenue base I've identified here is that the contribution factor is based off of, which is the 92 billion. And then I've got some reference information down there in comparison to what was what the contribution factor was based on last year. So we went from a 105 billion revenue base to a 92 billion revenue base, which is consistent from the previous year as well. It was a good jump from even the average from the previous decade, which was around 6 or 7%, and this one it's around 10 to 14% over the last couple of years. So a significant increase in decline for the industry's revenue that the contribution factor is based on. So I think this is the point where I need to turn it back over to Chair McKee to open this up for a vote. The contribution factor recommendation is that, and that previous slide there was just kind of a historical view of kind of what the different contribution factors have been over time. So that just gives you kind of an overall summary of history for that. And then that center column with the percent change, that gives you kind of the idea of, or the percentage decline that we've been experiencing since I think 2002 timeframe. So anyway, so with that, we can turn this over to Chair McKee and we can have her pose this for a vote.
Great. Thank you very much, Phil and Heather, for that very detailed presentation. I want to open it up to the council members to see if anyone has any questions on the contribution factor and budget, or any issues that you want to raise before we get to the vote. Okay, not hearing anything, and hopefully people had time to hit their mute buttons if they wanted to say something. I will now open the meeting for a motion to approve the Numbering Administration Oversight Working Group report and recommendation for the billing and collection fund size projections and contributions factor. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
This is Bob.
Go ahead, Bob.
This is Bob McCausland at Entrado Communications. I so move.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob. And anyone to second?
It's Bridget White, US Connect. I'll second.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Bridget. And
You're
with that second, we'll submit it to the council for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay, do we have any nays? Okay, not hearing any. Then Nancy approves the report and recommendations. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to everyone on the NAOWG. Now I think I'll turn it back over to Phil Lindsay for a presentation on the evaluation of the billing and collection agent. Phil?
Thank you, Chair McKee, and thank you, everybody. You're making my job pretty easy here, so I appreciate it. So the Welch LLP performance review. The background, we developed the evaluation consistent with the monthly deliverables that are included in the deliverable matrix. The NAOWG evaluates Welch performance on a monthly basis. We rate in that evaluation matrix on that monthly performance. The rating schematic that's used is a met, not met type evaluation. We schedule conference calls to gain industry consensus on the rating and evaluation, which was done during our normal meeting schedule on a monthly basis. So we move to the next slide, please. The Welch performance review, the NAOWG considered, reviewed and analyzed the following data while compiling its overall evaluation. So the monthly deliverables matrix overall score, the 2020 team meeting materials from the monthly calls, the FCC Nancy reports of those monthly or of the monthly reports, customer service processes, cleanup of receivables, our NAOWG's observation, the co-chair interaction with Welch LLP, and the contribution factor and budget related communications and printed material. If we move to the next slide, we can get into some details. Our recommendation is a met recommendation. This rating is defined as meeting the requirements in order to be considered successful. Performance was competent and reliable, and decisions and recommendations are within the requirements and expectations. And if we move into the next slide, we get into even more details around the specifics of what we were looking at. The budget estimates were made more difficult due to unknown budget estimates with limited data, including one-time costs of the reassigned numbers database. Welch handled this extremely well. The Welch collected funds necessary to fund the reassigned numbers database development, in addition to the funds to support the North American Number Administration. Welch successfully developed appropriate accounting for R&D funds and incorporated the reporting of R&D billing and collections into the monthly reporting. Welch maintained compliance with the red light rule consistent with FCC 0472. They were subject to 4 audits and provided all necessary information, successful on time completion of those audits. They managed multiple banking accounts associated with the collections and distribution of funds associated with both the NAMP and the R&D, including credit card payment functionality, resulting in decreased delinquent payments and reduced red light rule implications. Welch also prepared a detailed operational review for 2020 in an easy to follow format without being prompted to deliver. So those are essentially the highlights of our review. I think on the next slide, I think that pretty much concludes that review. I want to extend thank you to all the NAOWG members listed here. Thank you so much for all your efforts over this last year. It's been wonderful, and it truly has been a group effort. We get lots of participation on our calls, lots of questions, lots of good input into our process and our evaluation. With that, we can move into the next slide. We have 3 meetings remaining until I think that Nancy will recharter this group. Contact for the chairs of the NAOWG, myself and Bob and Betty. If you have any questions about this after the meeting, please feel free to reach out to any of us. With that, I can turn this back over to Chair McKee and to extend the vote to the Nancy for the NAOWG's recommendation of a meets expectations for the BNC billing agent Welch LLP.
Great, thank you very much, Phil, and thank you to everyone in the working group for all the hard work that went into all of this. So before we vote, does anyone have any questions about the evaluation? Okay, hearing none, I will open the meeting for a vote to approve the NAOWG's performance evaluation of the billing and collections agent Welch. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve?
This is Rich Shockey. I have a motion to approve.
Okay, thank you very much, Rich. Anyone to second the motion?
Comcast will second.
And that was Tim Cagle?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you very much, Tim. Okay, with that second, we'll submit it to the council for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, and do we have any nays? All right, then Nancy approves the performance evaluation of the billing and collections agent for 2020. All right, now we will move on to the public participation portion of the meeting. As I noted at the beginning, we enable public participation through comments filed in the docket, and when proceeding in our virtual fashion, we have a dedicated email address to receive comments at livequestions@fcc.gov. First, we'll turn to the comments filed in the docket. A public notice for this meeting was released on May 14th, and it asked members of the public to file any comments in the Commission's electronic comment filing system in docket number CC 92-237. Do we have any comments from members of the public?
We don't have any questions submitted in the docket.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any public comments or questions that we received through the livequestions.gov email address?
We have not received any questions in the live questions.
Okay, great. Thanks, Christy. Finally, do any of the Nancy members have any other business they wish to address at this time? Okay, hearing none, I just wanted to let everyone know we will schedule our next Nancy meeting prior to the October 15th due date for the first report from our call authentication trust anchor working group as requested in the recent charge letter that we received from the Wireline Competition Bureau. And we will let you all know when we have a set date for that meeting. Christy, is there anything else from the commission that you'd like to add?
Nothing else from us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Christy. If there's nothing else, I thank everyone for their time this afternoon. Please stay safe, and the meeting is adjourned.